So I just really want to quickly introduce our executive board for the Community Council. Again, I'm Lindsay, serving as the Community Council President. And I'm just going to look through and share folks so you can wave. We've got Meg Milkey, who is our secretary, doing the great work of trying to capture everything for this evening. We've got Peggy Auth, who serves as an auditor for our executive board. Irene Person-Gamble is our vice president. We've got Julie Leonard, also serving as an auditor. We have somewhere on here, Tawny. There we've got Tawny, who is also an auditor, and Arena, who serves as our treasurer that we'll be hearing from. And it looks like we've got a few other folks joining us who represent the council, including Representative Drummond and maybe some other ones. I just don't see their names, but we will hear from our local, thanks for joining us, Harriet. We will be joined and hearing updates from our assembly members and school board representative. And we do have some updates posted on our website in those other documents tab from Representative Clayman and Senator Alvy Gray Jackson. So if you want to see updates from our state representatives, you can also find those on our website. But from here, what I'm going to do is turn it over to the brief reports, where we'll talk briefly about the assembly, the school board, and the airport, and we will be digging into discussion and follow up on next steps about an issue that has also been part of the assembly's work around Assembly Ordinance 66 about acquiring those properties. So I'm not expecting Austin and Cameron to go in depth there. There's a lot going on, so excited to hear more about that first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Austin and Cameron.
Cameron, you want me to start? I have a little list and then you can hop in, or you want to start? Yeah, okay. Hi everyone, it's nice to see you. It's been a little while, I guess, since our AO 2020-66 meeting. Thanks to everyone. I think a lot of you attended that. So we've had a really busy summer, as you've probably seen in the news. There's a lot of stuff that's been less covered in the news. We passed on August 11th a package that represents about $156 million of CARES Act money that we have as a municipality to aid in COVID relief. That includes things such as a small business program, a public lands jobs program that puts people to work, rental and mortgage assistance, childcare, expansion of the food bank to serve hungry people, expansion of Awake to serve those who are who are involved in domestic violence situations, and a long list of things that you can find on our website. And I actually wanted to show you where you can find that. I'll share my screen quickly. Actually, before I get to that, one of the things I was going to talk to y'all about is we just heard Cameron, as the co-chair of the Public Safety Committee, might want to talk about this too, but we just got this data today from the chief regarding crime. Crime is down in every category this year since last year, which is great. And here you'll see the homicide numbers. Here's into some of the property crimes. We just had a presentation from the chief on this today. So as you can see, numbers dropping for each category. And then this is calls for service for violent crimes. Last year, we got to talk about with you how we were really proud in the prior from 2017 to 2019, we had dropped in all categories but sexual assault, and that there was a lot of work there to do, but now we can say that we've dropped in all categories since last year, which is great. So the other thing while I'm sharing, I wanted to show you is, sorry, the thing, can you help me do, well, okay. The share won't let me toggle between sites because it blocks it. There we go. So we've created a website that has a bunch of information about CARES Act funding and what exactly the Assembly has approved. So we categorized it here, and then there's more detail about every single line item here. So if you're interested in that, feel free to visit the website. It's really easy to get to. You just go to muni.org and click CARES Act information, and it brings up this homepage, and then you can navigate from there all of the information about the CARES Act. Okay, great. Other things I wanted to bring up include the alcohol tax. We've been having a number of community conversations and work with the Assembly members to try to determine what to do with the expected revenue in 2021 when the alcohol tax gets going. We've had a number of work sessions just with us and with the public, of course, and then also through the Health Policy Committee, Homelessness Committee, and also the Public Safety Committee. We've been having conversations there with community members and organizations that might provide services using the revenue from the alcohol tax. Recently, we worked with a bunch of Assembly members, worked with some hockey parents. The Ben Boki was being used to temporarily house folks experiencing homelessness because of $1 million that the Assembly approved with CARES Act funding to do rapid rehousing, which essentially, if people fall into homelessness, quickly picks them up and helps them, finds them a place to stay temporarily so that we can work on more permanent housing. Because we appropriated $1 million for funding of that, we no longer need to use a Ben Boki, and we're able to get the administration to switch their plans so that folks could get back on the ice. And I think that's it. I've taken too much time already. I want to give Cameron some time.
Oh, well, actually, thanks, Austin. You hit most of the points, the major points, and also do we have Jason on? Is he here today as well? Is he going to speak about specifically about the? Okay, great. So I won't talk through that much. Just wanted to hit a couple of other pieces real quick. As Austin has mentioned, the Public Safety Committee did a presentation today, but just wanted to also say that there's been a great deal of conversation over the last couple of months, especially about public safety and about policing specifically, and so there's been a number of things coming forward about how we can look at making our police department more transparent. There's an effort by a couple of Assembly members and in the past to be able to get all of their policies up online so that the public can access them and see them and be aware of any changes to those policies. There was also an effort coming forward to really look at the use of force, which was ultimately held off on, but that work is going to continue to look at sort of how we can look at the police force policies and make sure that they're responsive to both the police needs, but also responsive to public need. And then I just also wanted to sort of recognize the conversation that happened recently about banning conversion therapy and the long sort of days that we spent debating that, and ultimately it was banned, and that's a practice that I think both Austin and I agree was not safe and was a sort of a good choice for us to move forward in protecting kids in Anchorage. So those were all the things. I think she covered most of the things on my list. And then when we get to Jason's presentation, we can share more information about the work that's happening with America's Best. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you both. Because these are quick updates, we're encouraging folks to ask questions in the chat, and maybe folks can respond there as well. But I'm going to keep us moving and have school board report. Thank you, Star Marset, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Well, a lot going on, some good and some challenging. Right now, we have been asked if school will go back into the classroom. And our risk level right now, as of today, is a 14-day rolling average is 35 for the Anchorage municipality, and a 7-day rolling average is 38 for Anchorage municipality. So it is coming down. I did talk to the superintendent today before I attended, And our understanding is that we are going to look at things into September and could possibly start the second quarter back in the classroom. It will not look like the 5-day a week. It would probably be 2 days a week, for one thing, because we still have to do the social distancing. And so we'd have to break up the students in the classroom, but we would be able to get students back into the classroom at least for some time. I think everyone's aware that by now that we are providing Chromebooks to all those that need them. And so if there's any parents that are still needing a Chromebook, they can contact their school and it will be delivered to them wherever they'd like through our ASD transportation. And if internet is a problem, we do have some solutions for that also. So please contact your school. And if that is a need, we will help you get that resolved also. Basically, you know, it's kind of what's going on right now. School has started. My grandson actually started middle school this year, so he's been doing the Canvas online. I've been watching what he's been doing. It seems, although it's definitely not like being back in the classroom, we are being challenged. We've had some schools where the teachers have gone back into the school and COVID cases have popped up, and so we're having to send everyone in the school home. So that's just an example of what's happening with our teachers. We know if students were back in, we would probably be facing bigger challenges. So we're trying to do the best we can. We encourage parents to ask questions if they need answers. And we have a helpline on our website that you can go to, but please contact your schools because the principal and teacher should be able to help you or direct you in the right direction. And then if there's anything your group would like to hear about next month, I'd be happy to, or to follow up on, I'll be happy to send you that information.
Great, thank you, Star. It's been a very strange start to the school year, and we appreciate you sharing more. There are a couple questions in the chat, just thinking about the triggers to shut down and what that all looks like, since we are seeing that happen all over the state. So
Right.
perhaps we can follow up more on that and get information out through the council as well, if we can.
Will do.
Thank you. And so next report is from the Anchorage Airport, and we've got Terry joining us instead of John Johansson. We're excited to have you. Thanks for joining us, Terry.
Thank you, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. So yes, as President Lindsay said, John Johansson is out today, but I am here in his stead. I'm the planning manager for the Anchorage Airport, and I just wanted to briefly go over our airport update of things that might be of significance or of importance. First off, I just want to say that the airport continues to maintain a high protocol of cleanliness to continue to fight the battle of the coronavirus. The passenger traffic, as most people know, has been significantly down this summer. The tourists are not coming in as much, but we have seen an uptick in the cargo aircraft to kind of off balance that. And we've been keeping a reminder on the cell phone parking lot in the update for quite some time now. Just a friendly reminder to utilize that to your advantage. If it works in your plans. For the Lake Hood, there is a users group meeting tentatively scheduled for September 21st at 3 p.m. and more information will follow. That is probably going to be an online meeting as well, probably through Zoom or some other platform. And then also we have several recruitments that are out there for the airport. As you can see on the screen here, several equipment operator positions or airfield heavy equipment mechanics for our airfield maintenance team, police and fire recruitment, as well as an IT position for a microcomputer network technician. So those are always great opportunities to join a great team of folks working at the airport. And with that, that's really all I had. I'm happy to field questions, or if folks wanted to put it in the chat box too, I'll be online for the next 30 minutes to answer any questions too.
Great, thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was lightning fast. Okay, I don't see any questions about the airport, so I'll keep us rolling because we do have a lot of topics to cover.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
After the summer, there's a lot to cover, surprisingly. So I'll transition us over to talking about some initiatives around ending homelessness in the community. And this is, I think, what we'll spend the bulk of our meeting talking about for the next 20 minutes. I'm going to start us off before turning it over to Jason, just sharing a little bit about what the Spenard Community Council role has been over the summer and a few steps that we've taken, and share a summary about what we've heard from our community council residents. But it sparked from the municipality's proposal to purchase 4 properties around town, including the America's Best Value Inn for transitional housing in Spenard. And the projects and proposals for each of these areas happened after our June community council meeting. So what we did as an executive board was invited the municipality, assembly of different elected officials to come and share in Zoom in July more about what this project was and what it could mean for Spenard. And then there has been a lot of public engagement on these topics. There are days and days of public testimony at the assembly meeting themselves. So in Spenard, we also sent out just a survey with our community council members, trying to understand a little bit more about what input folks had for the community council to consider. And we did that because we, as a community council, didn't want to take a position at this point, not knowing where things will be going, and because it was the summer. But we did send out a Survey Monkey to get some feedback from our community council, just to help with us knowing that we're moving in a direction that our council members appreciate and are interested in, and addressing concerns and challenges as well going forward. So I'm going to share a little bit of a summary, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jason Bakaset, who's the Chief of Staff with the Mayor's Office, so he can share more about where things are at and where they're going. But this can help just kind of share a little bit more about, as a council, a direction that we've been hearing. So we put the survey out really looking for feedback and information that we can move forward on, not necessarily to drill down into decisions, up or down votes, anything like that. So this is a brief summary, and again, it's on our website, so you can dig into it in more detail. But we did hear from 39 Spenard residents. We heard from 6 non-residents, but I'm only giving you a summary from Spenard since that's our community council area. And one of the first questions was just getting a general opinion about the city's proposal for these property acquisitions. And this chart, as well as this kind of first bullet point, is sharing just a little bit more in that over almost 70% of the respondents were positive or very positive opinions for the project. And then there was about 20% of the respondents had a very negative or negative response. And then there was a few other folks who were neutral or other, and they were other generally because they wanted more information or weren't sure about all of the properties. So generally gives us information that our community is interested in seeing solutions, long-term solutions for addressing homelessness or providing treatment services throughout the municipality. And we did want to get feedback about what challenges we saw or people experience and what solutions folks have. And so there were a lot of comments that were really concerned about if the CARES Act funds should be used for this, if it could instead be used for businesses, and as well as just the long-term planning about what is the plan for these properties, what is the financing for these properties, and what will it ultimately mean. And because these proposals are so early on in the process, this information can help inform us going forward. And so when we ask what some of the main concerns are, you're seeing them all kind of up here on the screen, really looking at, again, what the facilities will be used for, the budgeting, some of those planning pieces, but also some concerns around panhandling or loitering or those immediate impacts to the neighborhood around where the facility would be in Spenard. We also got some open-ended responses, and so I tried to compile just kind of themes. And some of this we have addressed or touched on, but there are continuing concerns about property value. There are concerns about a fear-driven reaction to these proposals impacting community relations, and again, concerns about the use of the CARES Act funds. And then we also asked about what kind of solutions folks see to improve the quality of life for all residents in our neighborhood. And we also heard that that most folks, this over 50%, are really supportive of providing effective housing support services, increasing substance use prevention programs, as well as improving community health, public safety, and emergency systems. So those are things that I think we all can agree on. And then there's some other areas around other impacts that we could see wanting to provide solutions for, including providing courtyards, green space, garbage cans along the corridor, making sure that our community is still clean and safe. And then when we asked open-ended responses, a lot of folks were just reiterating that they really do support these kind of bullet points from above, as well as finding other ways to think of enforcing the laws that we do have to keep our community safe, sharing more solutions around long-term mental health supports, as well as other facilities and restrooms, and just recognizing that we currently have challenges and we want them to be addressed as well. And it might not just be from these facilities themselves. And when we asked for just different thoughts and ideas for consideration, I thought this word cloud kind of just bubbled up the themes that we kind of heard throughout this survey. So the reason we did the survey and are wanting to share out the information is to just kind of take a temperature check on our community, as well as help inform us as a council moving forward. So hopefully that kind of lays a groundwork for where we as a community council are coming from, and we can learn a little bit more from Jason for some of the nuts and bolts about where we go from here. So I'm excited to have Jason Bockenstead, the Chief of Staff for Mayor Berkowitz's office, to share more. I think you may be getting ready to share his screen or unmute, but excited to have you join us, Jason.
Well, thank you, Lindsay, and thank you for everyone coming out tonight. I don't have a formal presentation to share my screen tonight. I figured I'd just talk about a couple of the issues that we are working on, and then certainly we'll be available to answer questions either in the chat or if people want to ask them online, I'm happy to answer them that way as well. So I think the two kind of areas that I'll cover in my update involve work that our real estate department is undertaking now. And then I'll also talk about the work that our office, along with AHD, are doing on the RFP or request for proposal side of the ledger to get something out in the public to have different providers provide some proposals on this property in particular, but all of the properties that were approved by the assembly. So on the first side, Robin Ward, who is our real estate director, has hit the ground running on all of these properties, in particular on the America's Best Value Inn. She has ordered an appraisal of the property that will inform the municipality on what its worth is compared to what the asking price is. And she also is getting individuals that are both engineers and architects into the buildings to tour them and do some additional due diligence on how old are the boiler systems, how secure and how great is the foundation, the roof, kind of all of the things that a typical individual would do if they're looking to purchase a home. We are doing the same thing on that end. I think we anticipate some point in the next couple of weeks having a lot of that information back to us in terms of what the assessment comes out to, or what the appraisal comes out to. And then we'll really take a lot of the information that our engineers and others put together and start negotiating what a final offer would look like from the municipality to the owners of the America's Best Value Inn. Some of the additional work that we're also doing is, as we're going in, we're also looking at what other renovations might be necessary if we are successful in negotiating a final purchase price with them. I think, as we have presented in the past, both to the Community Council and the Assembly, we certainly are looking at a number of the rooms still need to have efficiency conversions, so kitchenettes added to them. A lot of the rooms already have those, but there are some that do need that upgrade. We would likely install security cameras and an intercom system, as well as doing some additional furnishing and fixtures in there, as well as looking at potential fencing and cleaning up and providing for a courtyard in kind of the area in between the two buildings. So all of those things are still very much in work and in progress right now on the real estate side. And like I said, we should have more information here in the next couple of weeks or months, month on each of those. On the other side of the ledger, again, as we presented to the Assembly and the Community Council, one of the things that we are committed to is putting out a request for proposal to try to find the most qualified provider to provide these services. We are writing that proposal as we speak, and I'll just mention a couple of the items that we know are included in there. And certainly, if folks have more ideas, we'd love to hear them and put them in the chat, and we'll take them back. I don't think some of them will come as a huge shock to folks, but you know, we want somebody that's experienced in providing these types of services. We do have a number of these types of facilities around town. There is one just down the street in Spenard. There's others in the downtown area. So there are certainly providers that have experience in providing these types of facilities. So that will certainly be one aspect that we score against. We'll look at what their approach, what their program design is. Essentially, what is your research-based program, and what is the level of service that you'll provide, and the number of clients that you'll serve, both within the rapid rehousing, transitional housing side, as well as on the permanent supporting side. And then, as I mentioned, since we have a lot of experienced providers, we want to see how they have measured and tracked success in other projects, and what their proposed performance measures are for kind of this project in particular. One of the aspects that the Assembly added during this process through an amendment was asking us to really take a look at the partner services, and that essentially comes down to including what type of transportation services will we provide at this facility. Certainly, one of the things that we liked about this facility is it's very close to a transit line, but we also wanted to ensure that there was additional transportation services for individuals there as well. So that's going to be a part of it. And then the last two that I'll talk about, a big one is kind of describe what your and how you would approach a neighborhood impact mitigation plan. So essentially, describe what your good neighbor policy is going to be, what your safety and security protocols are, to minimize negative community impact. And then the final one is, in particular with the America's Best Value, how do you leverage other funding sources to minimize the municipality's contribution to ongoing operations? And essentially, there are two particular areas with these types of properties that we're looking at. The first is, because we're doing permanent supportive housing as well, there's a real opportunity to work with the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation to have vouchers that will offset some of the housing costs associated with this facility. And then the other big one is, as a result of a recent waiver in the Medicaid program, it's traditionally referred to as the 1115 Medicaid waiver, there is additional opportunities to have some of these services that will be provided at this facility reimbursed through Medicaid. So that's just kind of a small little subset of some of the questions that, or some of the issues that we're going to be asking about in the RFP that we want them to respond to. Each of those will be scored with appropriate points associated with them, and then ultimately the best respondent will be selected, and the administration will negotiate a contract. And as we have mentioned, we'll have to come back to the assembly. We fully expect that there will be a work session on each of these RFPs for each of the properties if we are successful in purchasing them. And we'll have to explain, we'll have to probably introduce the ultimate provider and what the costs are associated with that. And then ultimately there'll be a public hearing on this in front of the assembly, and then the assembly will approve the contract or not. I anticipate all of this work happening over the next 90 to 120 days. I think our goal is to have all of this completed by the end of this year, and have this facility both renovated and ready to go at the very beginning of 2021, so folks can start using this facility. So that's the update that I have. I will certainly, on the RFP, our intent is at some point this month to have that out on the street. When we have it in a finalized form, I will certainly share it with Lindsay, particularly the ABVI one. I will share it with Lindsay so she can share it with the rest of the community council, so kind of everyone can see what questions we are asking of the providers to answer, and we'll keep you informed as we move through that process.
Great, thank you for that, Jason. And thanks, your little baby, I think, was joining you as well for that. But I was, just to reiterate on the timeline, it sounds like there will be work sessions, and work sessions are posted on the Assembly's agenda site, so folks can know about them and also tune in and participate in those work sessions. And we'll do our best as a community council to also share out those opportunities to our list and get folks engaged, especially around public hearings, and appreciate the opportunity, especially for the RFPs. That's a lot of what we heard from our survey, was that people have questions and want to know that this property would be managed and serve the intended purpose for our community. There's a lot of discussion in the chat, and also a few links that folks shared. And we also included one of the links in our agenda for the Muni's website for homelessness, muni.org/homelessness, that has more information about this. And then Chris Schutte also shared some information about the process for selecting the properties. And there are a lot of concerns that are also shared in here that I know that have been shared with the Assembly, and quite frankly will be part of the process going forward, so we can address concerns and find solutions. So appreciate folks there. I'm not seeing any questions directly to address. And I think we can move into the next section that also talks, we wanted to talk about another program in our community that is addressing homelessness as well and finding some solutions. And so we invited, or United Way of Anchorage has a program called Home for Good. And I think that's Eric who's joining us instead of Jason Grand tonight. So Eric, if you're able to unmute and share your screen, we'd love to have another spotlight on the many programs and projects to address this complicated issue in our community. Eric, we can see your screen, but we can't hear you.
How about now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
And I hope you see the PowerPoint slides.
We did a minute ago, but now I think we see your email.
Oh, sorry. Let me see here. And how about now?
No,
I see.
yes.
How about now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I am learning how to do this. Thank you for the opportunity to present what is going to be a very brief introduction to this project. The name of the project is Home for Good Anchorage. We've been working at United Way for a few years to stand this up. It is a permanent supportive housing project that specifically is going to address what the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness very recently identified as a large gap in Anchorage when it comes to addressing homelessness, which is the high priority need for permanent housing. We have a 700 unit gap throughout the community. This project will play a significant role in reducing that number, but will not be large enough to address the entire gap. I just highlight here how important this is. The project addresses the needs of maybe one of the hardest to serve subsets of the homeless population in Anchorage. To be eligible for the project, you would have to hit three main criteria, and that is having a history of persistent homelessness, a history of recidivism, cycling in and out of jail, and have very high needs. The folks in this project, 100% of the eligible people in the project have multiple severely disabling conditions that can include anything from schizophrenia to traumatic brain injuries to major medical conditions. Right now, because Anchorage doesn't have a comprehensive response to people that present this profile, essentially folks are cycling to the hospital, they cycle to API, they cycle to the shelter, they might get picked up for an arrest, they cycle out of jail, they go back to the street, they go back to the shelter. This cycling through all these emergency response systems is costing the community roughly $47,000 a year per person. For less money than that, we can provide people housing and intensive, robust case management services that end that cycle and free up all of those responders to make better use of their time and effort. So that frees up the police, it frees up the fire department, making emergency transport, frees up the hospital, frees up the shelter system. One of the things that's really unique about this project is its financing uses a high accountability structure so that no public money is spent until after we achieve the outcomes we promise. So right now, United Way of Anchorage and the municipality of Anchorage and an outside partner called Social Finance Inc., they're a nonprofit based in Boston, have been working together to set up this project and enter into an agreement so that if you look at the first circle here, we've lined up philanthropy to pay for the first year of the project. At the same time, we start paying our service providers to deliver services, and that is Rural Cap and South Central Foundation and Alaska Behavioral Health. They work with our clients to stabilize people in housing, and meanwhile, an independent third-party evaluator measures our outcomes to make sure we do what this project promises to do. Only then, in Circle 5, does the municipality then pay for any services. So if we fail to deliver what we promised, or we come in lower than we promised, the municipality and taxpayer money is not put forward accordingly. This project, as I've mentioned before, we've been working on it for a few years. We have multiple community partners working on this. Just looking just across the top there, Social Finance is our outside partner. You know what? United Way and Municipality are the other two right at the center of this. And I also highlight the fact that the project has really gotten off its feet with some funding both from HUD and from the Department of Justice. We launched a pilot last July. Right now, 21 people have been housed in our pilot year, and we have seen dramatic improvements in all these metrics. So 90% of the people who've been put into a lease have stayed within a lease. We've seen 85% reductions in arrests and transportations to the safety center, 63% reduction in stays in the shelter, and a 44% reduction in trips to the emergency department. Here I'm just basically showing how the breakdown of referrals has moved through this project. This is an update as of last week. As I referenced earlier, there's a lot of data evaluation that's key to this project. It makes it unique. No one has compiled data across all these different elements before, let alone track how well we were doing in outcomes. So here, basically, you can just see a breakdown of people who are receiving case management or in housing versus people who are still engaged in outreach, or maybe they're in bridge housing while awaiting a lease. This is essentially a reflection of the referral that people who qualify for the project would go through, and it's just a snapshot of how the project looked as recently as just last week. And here, I just want to give you a quick overview. Again, I mentioned that the municipality would not be paying for any services until after we proved that we started achieving outcomes. And that's what this calendar intends to show. So we have 3 years of funding lined up for this project. The first year funded through philanthropy, years 2 and 3 to be secured through the Muni with the approval of the Assembly of a contract that the Mayor's Office, Mr. Bockenstead, and United Way and Social Finance have been working on for months. It will soon go to the Assembly for consideration and a vote. And one of the things I wanted to take the opportunity to do today was give the Community Council a preview of what we're talking about here. Ideally, hear any questions and have the opportunity to address any concerns people might have, but basically to let you know that we have been working to set this up to be a highly responsive, responsible, and accountable project that is going to tackle one of the hardest problems Anchorage has faced in addressing persistent homelessness. It's the folks with really persistent high needs, as I mentioned before, cycling through the system. Until this project came along, it has just been a glaring gap. It takes all those partners I mentioned before aligning their efforts to give people the kind of support they need to succeed. And once again, I'll say that to provide this kind of solution costs less than it costs to let people continually cycle through the streets and suffer pretty difficult lives. I'll stop there because I realize this is a lot. I could talk about it endlessly because that's what I do all day, but I will entertain any questions or invite any questions, I should say, if anybody has any.
Thank you.
Hey, Eric.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Wrong time. Is it the wrong time to chime in, or should I just chat?
No, go ahead, Jared.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is my first meeting, so I'm kind of not sure what the protocol, everything, right way to do all this. But I did have a question. So is the Housing for Good, is that part of the Housing for Good pilot? Was that something to do with the 4 homeless shelters that the city's planning on buying? Or is that a whole separate project altogether?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. The pilot, it had no connection to those 4 purchases whatsoever. The pilot was funded initially through grants from the Mental Health Trust and Rasmussen Foundation. For example, the United Way gets some additional support from the Department of Justice and HUD. The Muni, the Assembly, also added some pilot money to help us bridge this period when COVID hit. Everything ground to a halt. We were really worried this whole project might fall on its face, but instead, actually, we were able to step up, and our service providers were able to step up and continue actually accelerating enrolling people, which has been exciting at a really desperate time. The properties, to the extent those purchases ultimately are successfully, the purchases go through, service providers start housing people, those could be among the places people in this project ultimately do live. Right now, people live in a combination of private landlord apartments scattered throughout the community, or they might be in a rural cap owned property where everyone in the property is receiving support services.
This is Cameron. Can I add something to this conversation?
Sure. Go ahead, Cameron.
So I just want to correct one thing. I don't agree that these 2 projects have nothing to do with each other. They have absolutely everything to do with each other. All of these projects are part of a comprehensive plan called Anchored Home. And that plan has been in place for a number of years and has a number of components. Both of these efforts, both the Home for Good and the purchase of the property, are all strategies and components of that plan. And so there is a direct connection between all of this work, and it's important that we continue to go back to that and realize that this community adopted that plan, and these are all efforts to try to move us forward on the priorities of that plan. Thanks.
Yeah, and I appreciate the clarification. I may have been overly focused on whether that was tied to the launch of the pilot.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Eric. Part of the reason we were glad to have United Way reach out to us is just because these topics are really timely right now, and it's a very complicated issue. And the Home for Good project, like you said, really focuses on the hardest to house residents. And I think oftentimes those are the people that people think of when you think of homeless. They're people who may be on the street corners or may have other issues, and they're the hardest to house, but they're not the entirety of our homeless population. And it is a very complicated system that we're trying to address as a community. So thank you for giving us an overview of the project, especially as it moves forward. And we'll try to share out some more information about that as well as it moves forward in the next steps as well. So with that, I'm going to keep us moving because we have a lot more to still cover and do some committee reports. We have a few committees with the Anchorage Community, or excuse me, the Spenard Community Council, and one has been on pause for a little bit, and that's our Audit Committee. So I'm going to turn it over to Arena so that we can move forward on some finance treasury stuff for the council.
Hey, thanks, Lindsay. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties just pulling everything up that I'd like to, but I can still start talking about it and everything like that.
Share the treasurer's report if you.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it open right now as well, and it's not coming.
Okay, I'll do it.
Keeps loading, but so we are having a lot of issues with our bank for a good amount of time. So we were unable to get the report in a timely fashion. Kind of got locked out of our account for a good 5 months. So, but we're back now, so we're good. So this report is inclusive of the term of guess the previous executive board. So that's the 28th of February of 2019 through the 28th of February of 2020. We started the balance of $30,000, and I mean, you can read it on the screen. We made a loan to the Spenard Farmers Market for $3,000 so they could expand some operations. We are expecting to receive the full repayment by the end of the year, or the end of the season. We've already received, I mean, it's outside of this scope, but just an update to the council. We've already received half of that amount from Mr. Mark Butler, so we're just waiting on the other half. We tried our pilot program of giving out gas cards at the end of each meeting during the past year, which was really successful, and we still have a few of those left. So perhaps when we get back to normal, then we'll be able to start giving those out again. So we also pledged $2,000 to the Spenard Beach Park Challenge Grant. And yeah, so now we're at, well, as far as at the end of February 28th, we were at $25,000, and you see the rest of the money. Does anyone have any questions on that? No? Okay, sweet. So the second thing that we're kind of been discussing in the executive board, what we really wanted to bring it out to the entire council to vote on is we have encountered so many issues with our bank that we really want to move banks. A couple of issues that I can tell you about is the fact that we literally got locked out of our account for like 6 months. We've just had a ton of issues, and they're also not open on the weekends at all. So it's kind of hard for those of us with a busy schedule to even like go in and deposit a check. So we've kind of been doing a lot of research and trying to figure out what the best system is, what bank it would be the best for us to move to. So we've narrowed it down, and we would like to move our bank account from First National Bank to Northern Bank, but we would like the council to vote on that. So, I mean, Lindsay, how would you prefer that we do this? Have some discussion, or would you like someone to entertain a motion?
Well, does anybody have, yeah, let's entertain a motion, and we can have discussion, and we created a Google form that we'll put in the chat so you can vote.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull that up right now as well.
The emotion.
One second.
The motion to change bank.
Okay, so I'm going to put it in the chat right now. This is to anybody who is I think we do need a motion. Entertained. Anyone want to move?
Yep. I'm entertaining a motion. Does anyone want to bring it forward? Arena, you can.
Okay.
I could also make a motion.
I'll second Connie's motion.
Yeah, to change accounts.
Is there any
Or
discussion?
banks. Yeah, banks.
Cool. So I'm putting in the voting Google Doc in here, the Google form. You are a voting member if you've been to one of our meetings in the previous 12 months. Is that correct, Lindsay?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So that's part of why it's difficult to vote on Zoom, is because you're a member if you live in the community council area or a business that represents it. That's my puppy banging on the door. And you're a voting member if you've attended a community council meeting once in the last 12 months. So you can fill out the Google form. We can come back in on it and just move forward with some of the next topics while folks fill that out. But we just need a formal motion so that we can, this is all of our money. This is a community council's bank account. So we wanted to make sure to bring it to all of you. So I don't see any questions in the chat. I don't see anybody unmuting or raising hands. So I'll go ahead and take a look at that. And I'll see if Jed is available to give a brief update about the Spenard Cannabis Committee.
Yeah, hi, thanks. The biggest update that I have is that we did get a signed neighborhood responsibility plan agreement with Anchorage Bowl. They were one of the last opened businesses that we didn't have a current signed agreement with. So I did get one from them. I think they've been open for about a year now, maybe a little bit less. They plan to, in addition to a retail facility, they plan to do product manufacturing, meaning manufacturing edibles. They're not doing that currently, but they plan to do that in the near future. We haven't had a cannabis committee meeting lately. I think probably February might have been around the last time we met. But I did send around notices to the other committee members on license renewal announcements that were sent to us, and didn't really hear any other concerns back. For those of you who are kind of new to the community council and are interested in cannabis businesses in Spenard and their activities, and if you have any concerns about them, you can certainly send them. You know, probably the best way to engage with the committee is to send an email to spenardcc at gmail.com, and then Lindsay can forward those emails, and I can add you to our committee list. But that's really kind of all I have as far as updates, and that's all I got. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And I added to the chat just the community council website where we are posting the neighborhood responsibility plans, so you can see which we have a lot of businesses in Spenard, and these signed agreements are really just to open a conduit for communication. So if and when there are concerns or needs in the community, we know who to talk to, and we invite business owners for both cannabis as well as liquor stores to come to our community council meetings. So that's why we had some folks joining us today as well. So thanks for doing that. Oh, it looks like Irene has a question.
Hi, Jed. Hello. It was nice to see you yesterday walking down the street with your new dog. I'm just curious because I was on the coastal trail and talking to some different people as I was riding my bike by. How many cannabis stores are in the Spenard area? Somebody was really surprised. I think they were from, I don't know, Texas or someplace, about how many shops. And they asked just, I wonder how many shops there are. So do you happen to know how many there are in Spenard that we're kind of keeping a monitor on?
I can't tell you the number of open retail stores off the top of my head. I do know that there have been a couple that have opened recently. I believe, I can't remember what's their name, the one off of Northern Lights and Spenard in the old Ski AK building. It looks like Cloudberry is either open now or is very close to opening. They're right across from the Carousel Lounge. The Muni has a good map on their website that has locations of where they all are. I can't tell you off the top of my head. I would say it's probably close to a dozen though, retail.
Okay. All right, thanks. I'll look it up, and if I stumble across another visitor, I'll let them know. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Our next topic is it was an event that we hosted last year with a lot of community partners and found very successful. And now we live in the time of coronavirus. So I'm going to turn it over to Meg to see if there's interest and creativity to host another Trick or Treat Fish Creek event.
Hi, everyone. For those that were not able to participate last year, I can give a quick overview of what it looked like last year. It was kind of a celebration of the opening of the Fish Creek Trail. And we had, our community council had 2 different booths, and we had different partners, such as Anchorage Park Foundation, just one off the top of my head that hosted booths to give out candy and treats along the park or along the trail. So I think my update here was more to gauge feedback and thinking about being really mindful about how we could potentially move forward with this event, understanding that things might change, and you know, it's very possible it might have to be, as Lizzie said, creative and look for virtual opportunities to celebrate the spooky season. But essentially what I'm would be asking for is people are welcome to type in ideas into the chat box or email spenardcc@gmail.com with ideas. Maybe there's folks that have been to events And there might be people that want to express their concern about it. And I think that's totally fair too. And kind of depending on the feedback we receive and ideas, we'll kind of move forward. Some ideas could be things like Halloween's on a Saturday, maybe making the event longer, maybe trying to see if we could do one way on the trail for people coming, mask requirements. I know that gets really tricky with children. So maybe with all those things, thinking about doing something online, you know, maybe making a Facebook page for folks to post their Halloween decorations or outfits and whatnot. So kind of just gathering that feedback. I'll be monitoring the chat box, but also feel free to email spenardcc@gmail.com, and we'll be monitoring that and can kind of check in and again keep monitoring the situation if it'll be possible to host such an event. So I appreciate any and all feedback, ideas about how we could potentially celebrate Halloween and do some sort of version of the Trick or Treat Fish Creek.
Great, thank you, Meg. It was a really fun event. We were surprised by the amazing turnout and the families that were coming along the Fish Creek Trail. So hope that can happen. I think there have just been a few chats about masks and interest. And so if people want to be part of planning, maybe we could have kind of a small group convene on that stuff too. Irene has another question.
I was there as you were. It was brilliant. Anyone who wasn't there, I wish we'd always had that because it's an Alaskan kid and tromping around everybody's house in the dark and whatever. It was brilliant. And masks? Are you kidding? It's Halloween. Kids want to wear masks. I think we'll have no problem if we just turn the whole mask issue into Halloween masks. So anyway, that was my 2 cents. Thanks, Meg. Good point. Good report.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next topic, we've got Tim Sullivan joining us from the Alaska Railroad. They have a tree clearing that they've got coming up, and so Tim is here to tell us more about it. Tim, are you there and able to?
I am here. Lindsay, do you want me to share my screen with that handout or just go from here?
Yeah, if you'd like to, you can go ahead and do that. I also have it up if you want me to.
Why don't you go ahead and do it? That'd probably be just, there you go.
Oh, good. Right here.
There we go. So thanks for letting me come and talk tonight. I've also got Gabe Thomas, who is our project manager on this project here, who can answer the finer details of the project. But what we've got going on and something we've been working on for the last couple of years is doing tree clearing along our right of way for a couple of reasons, most of them related to safety. This year in this area that we're talking about, which is clearing to go from Northern Lights Boulevard all the way up to 36th Avenue along our right of way. We had a couple of big cottonwood trees fall on our tracks, blocked trains, came close to hitting trains, and has become a bit of an issue for us. In addition, we've had quite a bit of a homeless problem through this area and crime in the neighborhood as well that has been facilitated by being able to hide in the woods, tents in there, people who've been camping out for long periods of time. So we've worked in different parts of town with DOT, with the municipality, and with others to clear out some of these problem areas and make sure that what we've got is better sight lines for ourselves so that we don't have people who are running out of the woods onto the tracks, and better sight lines for the police and others who are coming through the area to make sure that there isn't bad stuff going on. We did have an issue, I believe this last winter or maybe the winter before, with the folks at the very north end of this, the Captain Cook Estates, where a couple of times people were going in there, coming off our right of way, hopping in the fences into their backyards and breaking into the houses up there. So I'm sure that's been an issue in other places as well. Those are just the two that I heard of. So we're working on that. There's going to still maintain a buffer from somewhere between 5 and 20 feet of trees, depending on the area. There's quite a few yards and fences that have encroached pretty deep into the right of way, some 20 and 30 feet into the right of way. And so they're going to lose most of that tree buffer, but there will be something left to help block the noise and block the side of the trains a little bit as you go through the neighborhoods. So just wanted to make sure that folks know what's going on before it happens.
Great, thank you. And I know some folks joining us live along that corridor. Are there any questions from the group?
I'm unmuted.
You're unmuted.
Oh, so it says trespass mitigation in the little old Hermit Park neighborhood where we live, which is in Spenard. That is our western boundary of our little neighborhood. That is our shortcut across the railroad tracks. Is there going to be a buffer that prevents me from crossing the railroad tracks?
Well, if you're not crossing it at a designated crossing, you're trespassing.
Right.
I mean, and so, you know, we're not trying to cut everything in half by being through there. And we recognize that people do cross and things like that. We encourage them to get out of the way. But, you know, we're not putting any designated trails through that area. If that's, is that what you're heading for, Matt?
There are trails through that area that are heavily trafficked.
Yeah, I know. And they're all trespass and they're all in our safety area. And, you know, we want to, and, you know, we want to make sure that folks do understand that they're not supposed to be in that area. The right of way extends 100 feet on either side of those railroad tracks. And all of that is our safety and safety area, as well as our operations area. You know, we run trains through there between 35 and 45 miles an hour. Those train cars are 80 feet long. And if there's a derailment, those cars are going to go that far. We also have, you know, we go through there with snow plows that are 25 feet wide on either side, pushing the snow out. And so, you know, there are all sorts of issues that we want to keep people away. Now, you know, we are realistic that those things do go on, that people are using that area. And so we don't, our issue right now is more with, and, you know, we recognize that that's something that's always going to be, but our issue now is with the homeless folks who are in there and the crime that comes along with it, and the issues that that's causing all the way up and down our tracks throughout Anchorage.
Yeah. So we walk our dogs through there, but we also clean up through there, and the amount of needles and old clothes that we pick up there is really upsetting. So I don't have an answer, but.
Well, we think, you know, daylight cures a lot of ills. And we think if you can open it up a little bit, put a little more light on the situation, and make it so that people can see what's going on back there. Because a lot of the time you can't. I mean, if you're walking through there, you don't know what's behind that clump of trees or, you know, 30, 40 feet down. Having an opportunity to open that up will make it better for everybody.
Great, thank you.
I saw Representative Drummond had a couple of chats that come up. I didn't get a chance to.
Yeah, and I think I might have missed Representative Drummond.
So, Representative Drummond, what I can tell you is that the houses in Captain Cook Estates are not in the right of way, but some of them have extended their yards into the right of way. They're encroaching. So they've got 30 feet of backyard, but they've put their fences 40 or 50 feet out so that they've built their yards out into the right of way. And that's something we're dealing with.
Oops. Thanks, Tim. I understand that. I used to represent that area as a member of the assembly, and then the House district boundaries do not align with the assembly district.
I know.
So, but I still have contacts in that neighborhood, and they contact me until they realize that it's Austin and Cameron they now have to talk to about those kinds of issues. So I like
constituents get into a habit.
I like to keep up to date on it, and plus there's railroad in the rest of Spenard too.
Yep.
That is definitely in my district. So I really appreciate hearing an update about that.
Yeah, you bet.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Tim, for bringing this up to the council. And I posted that handout as well on the website. So if folks want to share that or get more feedback.
Yeah, and I think my contact information is on there if anybody has any future questions. But if not, you can find me on the railroad webpage and reach out to me either by email or phone number. Always happy to answer any questions folks have.
Lindsay, this is Karen Button. I actually have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Karen.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Tim, for your presentation here. I'm just curious with this issue. You know, a few years back, I think it's maybe been 3 or so, when the railroad started asserting the breadth of the right-of-way, there was a lot of contention about that, and it ended up, I believe, in a proposed House bill within the legislature. to reduce the right-of-way for the railroad because I mean, even a former executive at the railroad said that he thought that the right-of-way was excessive. And at that time, there was some conversation about people who had, encroached upon, in their backyards and so forth, some of those decades and decades old, that the railroad would be, I don't know if the railroad was actually willing to do this or if there was a proposal to do this, people purchasing that portion of the right of way. So anyway, it's a very contentious issue. And I guess what I'm wondering is, has there been any public comment or a debate or opportunity for people who this is going to be affecting to have some kind of say in it? Or is it just the railroad is just going to be doing this and everybody's going to be surprised by it?
Are you talking about, so two or three different things there. Are you talking about the public having a say in the cutting of the trees, or the public having a say in what the railroad owns, or what part of that?
Well, if the public has if there's some opportunity, property owners that have had, who have encroached on the right of way for decades, some of these are, especially in Spenard, has been many, many, many years. And I know that when the railroad first started talking about asserting the right of way, because they hadn't done that for several years, decades, that there was going to be, there was going to be some possible opportunity, for the railroad to be in conversation with those property owners. And I don't want to derail the conversation here or anything. I know we're not going to get forward on it, but if there's, I just want to know if there's some process, or if people are just going to, wake up one day and their fences are going to be gone and half of their garden is going to be gone.
Well, that's, Karen, that's actually a really good question. There's a lot of details on that. We've been working on it for, let's see, I've been with the railroad for a little over 9 years now, and it was an issue before I got there. And I'm happy to take this offline if you want to have the conversation, or I can come back in a month or two and we can have a real in-depth conversation about it. Long story short, there's been several propositions in Juneau. We continue to assert that the federal government owned the right of way when it built the railroad in 1914, transferred all those rights over, and the railroad has all those rights. There's, nothing that we're going to do is going to be a surprise. We're going to have conversations with people. If at a certain time, I just saw a question pop up, if there's ever plans to double track through Spenard. Well, it is laid out to be able to do that. We've got that bridge over Northern Lights Boulevard is actually 2 bridges that's set up so that we can double track. When that bridge got built through there, it was set up so exactly for that. So there's, there will never be a time, I can tell you, that we will sell the right of way. It is too crucial for the safety and the operations of the Alaska Railroad, and if we're going to ever double track through somewhere. But we do allow residential uses of it for people who do have yards and gardens and lawns and those sorts of things in the right of way, with the understanding that it's not a permanent thing, that they are, that they're using the railroad. It's just like if it was using your next door neighbor's yard and they said, yeah, you can use it for a while, but if I ever want to build a driveway and park my Studebaker back here, that's, you don't get to use it anymore. And that's kind of what we've got going on now, is that we're letting people under a permit policy use the right of way. But when we need it for railroad options, or for many of the other things that the railroad right of way is used for, including utilities, the coastal trail, extensions of trails, those sorts of things that the municipality may want to do, that edge of the right of way becomes very crucial for that. We're a utility corridor. We're a transportation corridor. We're not a lawn and garden corridor.
Thank you, Tim. I see more questions about railroad, and maybe we do just need to have you back. We haven't had you in a while.
Yeah, I would be more than happy to.
Thank you. And I added your email address to the chat so folks can also reach out directly.
Oh, I'm in trouble now.
Yeah, I know. I was like, well, I'm putting it in there. It's not on the site.
This is George Ascott. Could I just remind everyone, is the Alaska Railroad is property of the state of Alaska, right?
Yeah, it's owned by the state of Alaska.
Okay, so you do have a responsibility to respond to the citizens. I just remind people that trail between Northern Lights and the Coastal Trail, which had probably been there 100 years, was completely taken away with no public process. So I think people have a right to be concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, George. I'm going to keep us rolling. We'll have a few minutes to discuss a topic Peggy Auth is bringing forward. It's about a rezoning for a subdivision on Northern Lights. It's just outside of our community council, but it is a consistent pattern that we've addressed in our community council. So we wanted to bring it forward as we consider submitting a letter on this on behalf of the council. So Peggy, are you there?
I am.
Perfect. We can hear you.
I'm not tech savvy, so I don't have, and I did have very little time, so I'm not going to show maps or anything. But the issue is there is a trailer court, a very deteriorated trailer court. It's the I'm forgetting the state's trailer court, and it borders Benson to the north and Arctic to the west. And the reason that I'm bringing this up, and the reason I think this should be a concern of the community council, is that the proposed rezone will make most of that property there, which is now about 66 trailer homes, and most of it will become B3. A small section of it would be reserved for residential and probably multi-story. The reason that I bring this up to our community council are several reasons. One is that in 1999, there was a proposal to take out a trailer court that is now where the North Slope Borough is. They took out 211 trailers, and none of those were replaced within the Spenard. That was in our council area at the time, and none of those homes were replaced. Now they're talking about taking out another 66. The problem is they want to turn it to B3, saying that there is a lack of commercial zoning, which seems ridiculous. If you drive anywhere in Anchorage, there are many, many, many commercial lots and commercial properties that are now vacant or are they're for rent or lease. So it seems to be and yes, Harriet, it is in the Midtown Community Council, and that's one reason that I'm bringing it up, because the residents of Midtown are not sufficiently being represented by their community council, which is very, very heavily business and commercial owners and business owners, developers. And right now they're getting short shrift. And my concern is that right now we're talking about homelessness, and Midtown has already, their demographics are very high, minority related. They are lesser income, that they are not being represented in those big office buildings that you see between C Street and Arctic. These are kind of the working poor, and we're talking about homelessness. And I think that we need to take a position of wanting them to keep that as residential. I think the trailer park is in bad shape and it does need to go. But I think we need housing, and I want our elected leaders to know that we have a real concern, because right now, Midtown has less than 1% of all vacant land in Anchorage. And of that, only 12 acres is now residentially zoned. So we're talking about putting more and more businesses in Midtown. Right now, Lindsay is working on a Midtown corridor plan that's trying to take some of that congestion out. The last thing we need to be doing is moving people further and further away from their jobs, dependent on individual cars, creating more congestion, making it harder for people to live in Anchorage, as opposed to being having to move out to Wasilla or Palmer to more affordable housing areas. I think this is, even though it's not in our community council areas, it's right across the street from the boundary, which means it affects Spenard too. And Tyler, I wish it was yours. I wish Cook Inlet was in charge of this, but they are not. So I'm asking the community council. I have not drafted a letter because number one, I wanted to bring this in front of the council so people can make comments and everything. And I would be willing to draft a letter along with Bob to represent the council in the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing so that they know how we feel about this, because I think this is really important. I think this is a very, very big issue that we spent the majority of this meeting talking about homelessness and poverty and everything else. And we're talking about moving another 66 homes out of our area. So if anybody has anything else that you'd like me to include in the letter.
Thank you, Peggy. Tani has her hand raised. Go ahead, Tani.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, and I appreciate you bringing this to the council tonight, Peggy, that I think this is important, especially because one thing that I took notice of over kind of before COVID, but as I was attending more of the Community and Economic Development Committee meetings and learning about the process for cannabis license approvals, I noticed that there were several, just in the short few meetings I went to, where folks were actually asking for some sort of accommodation to turn their residential house or like a duplex or something into essentially a cannabis store. And in this one situation I'm thinking about, they actually were going through the process of giving notice to their tenants to move, that they would have to move out so that they could then have this new operation. And I only share that because I think it's really important to remember that there is a lot of business property and property that's already could be used in some way for the things that they're trying to tear down, the trailer parks, instead of putting up new housing, especially since we are facing such a huge housing crisis. So it was more of a comment and that I support us getting involved as well. Lindsay, you're on mute.
Well, shoot. Hello. I'm seeing some folks supportive in the chat and some questions about just the costs and challenges for permitting and bringing things up to code. So it sounds like we'll dig deeper into this, and thank you, Peggy, for continuing to move this forward. It's been a comment that we've had consistently over the last few years about any rezones from residential to business without replacing the residential. So thank you for continuing to move that forward with us, Peggy.
Lindsay, just so you know, the hearing is on September 29th, which means that this will be decided before our next community council. So if it would probably have to go I'm telling the council, it would probably have to go before the executive committee, because we'd have to have our comments in about 10 days out to make sure they're included in the packet to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So if we're not going to take a vote or anything tonight, then I want people to be aware of that. And you can also make your own comments too, as individuals, but this is what I'm hoping the council will aim for, is anything housing.
Thank you. We're seeing some good feedback too from Tyler around development, and these are complicated issues, so I appreciate it. And we have in the past had different letters that we submit come to the executive board before we could have a council meeting. So we'll continue that pattern, and we'll bring a final letter if we do submit something to the next meeting, and we'll have it on our website as well. So thank you all. We're going to be going a little bit late. It's already 8:30, but I want to make sure we have time for community announcements. So if you have an announcement, you can, of course, put it in the chat. You can raise your hand by clicking on the raise your hand button, or you can unmute and flag us down and I'll call on you. But does anyone have community announcements to share And they could be events, they could be things going on in your neighborhood, they could be questions you have that you want to connect with others about. I'm seeing Matt and Margaret raising their hands first, so you are up.
And unmuted. Hi, my name is Matt Duncan, and Margaret and I are zooming to all of you from our little corner of the kingdom of Spenard. We created a micro neighborhood inside of Spenard, basically out of thin air. We just decided that there's some natural boundaries with the railroad tracks to the west, and Benson, and then Lois, and then 36th Street. We're just kind of a cube there. And we created a Facebook page called Old Hermit Park Neighborhood, and we hand delivered notices to all 211 households in that little area and invited people to join. We have 49 members of our little Facebook page. We've had multiple community cleanups where we've gone out and picked up trash together. And after talking with everybody, in order to combat our litter and petty crime problem that we have, there's basically two things that we're interested in seeking help, suggestions, knowledge, anything from the community council. Is we looked into getting crime watch signs put up in the neighborhood, but it doesn't fit with the ethos of our neighborhood. We are actually not going to call the cops. We are not aggressively watching everything that you do. You're welcome to come spend time in our neighborhood. But we do want some sign that says who we are and that we're separate. Something more along the lines of littering on Lois Avenue is punishable by up to a bazillion karma points. Something along that line. Something that says, you know, Treehouse Alley is a cool feature in Old Hermit Park neighborhood because your mom's not here. If you don't clean up after yourself, she might show up. And then, so something along that lines, and we don't know how to raise money for that. We don't know what to say on the signs. We don't know who to commission for them. And then the other issue that we have is the overpasses over Benson and Northern Lights. Those are made strictly for the people in this neighborhood. They're made for us. That's how we are supposed to get to the grocery store. They are, for the most part, impassable. No one wants to use them. They are disgusting. Margaret has used the word menace to the neighborhood. We either need them serviced or we need them removed. And we, as the community, have cleaned them many, many times for many, many years, and we can't keep up. It's just beyond what we can do. And I honestly don't know if the city can keep up either. But so those are our two things. Little Old Hermit Park neighborhood. Come visit us. That's all we have.
Perfect. Thank you both. I added the Facebook group to the chat, so you can go ahead and join if you live in that micro neighborhood. I see Harriet raising your hand, Representative Drummond. If you have an
actually, thank you, Lindsay. I just wanted to thank Peggy and Bob for bringing up the issue of the trailer park in Midtown. I also represent that area, and the people who actually live there are feeling completely ignored and abandoned by the business dominant Midtown Community Council. And I don't know what to do about it. It's really frustrating. And I know that the Midtown Community Council was created in the early 2000s when Dan Coffey was still on the assembly, and he insisted on creating this council no matter who was available to staff it and run it. And it turns out that it's now being chaired by, I have to think of his name, from Al Tamagni, who was kicked off the Abbott Loop Community Council because he was permanent. He was like president forever. And his tendency on that council actually led to every community council in Anchorage having its bylaws rewritten and term limits instituted on the officers. So it's a really interesting story, and it's now migrated to Midtown. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, and let's talk about how we can help those folks out. Maybe we need to kind of adopt them back into Spenard because people actually live there. And the rest of it's like the lowest voting precinct in my whole district because there are very few people that actually live there. They can vote, and the businesses don't vote. They all live somewhere else, pretty much. So it's a real point of frustration. So just thank you for bringing it up. Appreciate it. And also remember that any marijuana business is a conditional use permit. First, the zoning has to be right, and then they have to get an agreement from the community council as to whether they can operate the business or not. So converting a former residence into a marijuana business may or may not fly. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? I'm gonna share too, if I don't see anyone. Tyler, I'm going to Tyler with Coconut Housing.
Thanks, Lindsay. I'm just gonna say real quickly, it's always fun to hang out with this group for sure. We're working hard on a couple of projects. There might have been some notices recently. We have some stuff coming before the Platting Board and the Urban Design Commission that's coming up. And if anyone has any questions about those, I'd love to answer them ahead of time. You know, these forums are hard online. So, but I'll put my email on there. I'm always willing to talk about what we're trying to accomplish. I'd also like to say, you know, we're working hard on the Church of Love. It's been a challenging project, but it's getting close to wrapping up a good phase and getting our artist tenants back in there and really thinking about what that space can be when we get to the point where we can all start gathering again safely and being in person. And I would say that, you know, that project is about people that live in Spenard, but it's also about our local businesses. So I see, you know, Paul Berger with the Carousel Lounge, who's having, you know, a tough time right now. It's hard for small businesses, especially. So I just want to say, like, hey, keep on keeping on, whether you're on the residential side of things or the business side of things. I really want to see people understand the perspective of small businesses, and I want to see businesses understand the perspective of people that want to live in kind of these dynamic neighborhoods. So again, good job, Lindsay. I love the meeting that you run, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about what we're up to. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Before the meeting started, we were chatting about all the different construction going on in that region, and we were like, it's all Coconut.
Well, there's a lot, and there's a lot of site work, and to Paul's point, there's a lot of stuff that kicks in when you do change of uses, and it looks, I think it looks really good, but there's a cost to it. And so I think we need to continue to examine those costs, understand if those are really the right places we want to be spending our money. And we're always happy to be kind of the guinea pig in these things and really evaluate, does this make sense just because we could pull off a deal here and there? Does it make sense for the whole corridor? How do we figure out really the most important things of having green space, pedestrian space, but also accommodate cars and business? It's a challenge, but you know, let's get serious about it and think about real solutions and not just kind of, you know, yell at each other across the aisle.
Thanks, Tyler. Irene has an announcement. I'm unmuting you, Irene, or maybe I'll try to. It didn't work, so maybe there you go.
I just wanted to kind of highlight Tyler and Peggy and Harriet and everybody. I love these meetings and I miss everybody. But when I think about some of the issues, like if you put in a business and you take away the homes, people, yeah, it's not a good situation. I have background from Europe. In that whole old country, people had their shops on the main floor or on the street, and then there was a house above it, maybe even apartments. I think that's typical in New York, which I'm not that familiar with. But is there a way that in that rezoning kind of thing, that if somebody wants to rezone to a business, they have to include some kind of living space, and then maybe people would live close by to where they work? So I mean, just a thought, not needs to be answered right now, but thinking about other places on the planet have obviously done this for many, many years, but we tend to think of one structure, maybe one or two stories for one purpose. So maybe that's something to throw out there for creativity. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to share an update on our vote about changing banks. The motion passes to change to Northrim by a vote of 8-0. So thank you all. It will make our lives very, very much easier on the executive board side of things. I have a couple more announcements I want to share. The Spenard Community Council is joining some other partners to host a Fish Creek cleanup before winter comes. It'll be next weekend on Saturday, September 12th. And I'm about to post the Facebook event into the chat as well. We'll be meeting at the Woodland Park picnic shelter and then fanning out from there. So if you're interested, come by at noon and then bring a team, wear a mask, we'll be distant, but it'll be a good community building opportunity before winter comes. So we're partnering with quite a few different organizations on that, including Friends of Fish Creek, who are on the call, as well as Anchorage Park Foundation, Anchorage Waterways Council, and NeighborWorks Alaska. And I'll also share that there is a interactive website for a project, kind of a sidewalk or a road project for Lois Drive and 32nd Avenue. And that's a project that we all voted on from a past bond. And there is consideration for just a design phase, like what could actually happen in that region to make it safer to walk, especially to the Aquarian Charter School in our district. And it connects to some of those overpasses that Matt and Margaret were talking about just a moment ago. So I'll also share that in the chat. You can submit comments to the planning group on this by Friday of this week to be factored into their design, but you can also submit comments to them throughout the process going forward, but the sooner the better. So that's another update for the group. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Does anyone else have any community announcements? Last call. I think that's it. Well, thank you all for staying 12 minutes late. I know there was a lot to talk about. It's really hard to keep everyone engaged on Zoom, but I really appreciate everybody because I feel like we did interact not only in the chat, but face to face as best we can. Our next meeting is in 1 month on Wednesday, October 7th, and we'll put out a notice. We might be able to meet in person, and if not, we will continue to meet on Zoom. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Anyone?
I move to adjourn.
Was that Karen? Okay,
Yes,
thank
it was.
Okay.
Paul seconds. We're good. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate everybody's participation. And again, stay engaged. Like us on Facebook. We're kind of more active there, but we will post everything to our website too.